You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Friday. We're finally doing it. It's been a weird, crazy week. I'll explain momentarily. But Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Not so much this week. Not so much most of the time here because we do things in a very unorthodox. I fit it in where I can. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And sorry for the crazy week between the travel back from Manhattan to Election Day and having to go an hour each way to vote since I never changed my address and I didn't do absentee to my birthday. So and then yesterday just having to go back to my mom's. It's been a lot of travel, not a lot of work. But we are getting to the mailbag on this Friday. We have more questions, I think, than ever. So we have to just race through it here. Because we're going to try to keep this to half hour-ish because they're really trying to be strict about that. So we're going to do our best. Plus, that's all I really got time for. James Crudup, starting with our leaders and best, James Crudup at James Crudup 6. You can only keep one. Sharon Moore, Jesse Minter. Which one are you keeping? That is a tough one. I long sat there and thought Jesse Minter, but I think it would have to be Sharon Moore because of what he's brought to the offensive line, more so than I think just the general offense. It went up a massive step, and I didn't think that was possible coming off of Ed Warner, who I still think the world of. I still talk to him every now and again. But I think that he might be a little bit more important, whereas Jesse Minter has shown that you can take a scheme and run with it. Is there another Baltimore Ravens acolyte that Jim Harbaugh could go get? I don't know. Maybe you could go get Wink Martindale if Jesse Minter was to bolt after this year. So I think I would have to go with Sharon Moore. Josh Barr at Jadicki. Rutgers left the team a bit beat up, especially on the offensive line. The depth has been pretty good, but how much should Michigan focus on getting preferred starters healthy the next 2 weeks to prepare for the game? Basically, rest versus reps to prep for OSU. I think you want to get a little bit of both, right? You need the reps. You want guys to be ready, right? It's kind of like, I think of it in terms of, I hadn't really had a lot of time to do my long walks since the season started. And then when in Manhattan, I walked about 10 miles a day. And after that first day, I was like, I don't want to walk anymore. Second day, walked, I was like, oh, I don't want to walk anymore. Third day, like, oh, I don't want to walk anymore. By the fourth day, my legs are sore, but I'm raring to go. And when I got back and didn't have time to really walk around, it was like, my body's like, let's go, let's do it. I think that the Michigan needs to find a way to be able to get the reps. But of course, if someone's really banged up, get them some rest. But they've got to be ready, of course. My brother in metal, Michael Wolf at MWolf21. Illinois is basically Michigan's stunt double. With their loss to MSU, how are you feeling about Michigan versus Illinois? I mean, I feel like Illinois' schedule wasn't particularly impressive. I think when you looked at like Iowa and I believe Minnesota, it was like you're looking at it and you're like, okay, they seem like they're pretty good. And they are probably pretty good, but I think it's Big Ten West version of pretty good because now that they've played an East team that's not considered pretty good, they got kind of embarrassed to some degree. So with that in mind, I think that I'm not nearly as impressed with Illinois as I was. That said, I mean, they're still scary. I think Michigan will win, but it's not as daunting of a task as it looked to be. Jimmy Whitner at Jimmy Whitner 1. What areas of improvement are you hoping to see this week versus Nebraska? That's easy. I want to see more effective passing in general, especially compared to the Rutgers game. You know, if they could hit on the deep ball like a couple times, then great. I don't really feel like they need to do anything. I think this is probably the time of year where they need to start putting some things on tape to set up the counter. So that's also what I want to see. Number 2, JJ over 100 or over under 300 yards passing. I'm going to go under until it happens again. I know he had it before. It kind of seemed like Michigan was going to pass all over, but they've established their identity kind of since that Indiana game. Number 3, Corum over under 25 carries. I'm going to go under. I think he'll be like a 20 carry. I think he'll get like 20 carries. I think Edwards will get like 15, and then the field beyond that. KRTF Farmer 84. DJ Turner is clearly talented and athletic, but has struggled on occasion this year. Do you think this will impact his decision about leaving for the NFL at the end of the year? He should have more eligibility left. I think it could, but I think it all depends. It depends on what happens now. Because what happened up to this point in the year, especially because Michigan hadn't had really any big premier matchups outside of Penn State. We've seen guys make their big draft push simply just off of having an incredible bowl game. Jamarcus Russell comes to mind. So it's too early to really say. At this time last year, I remember talking to some people and they were like, yeah, Ojabo needs to come back for another year. And then how did that turn out? Things can change in a hurry. Jonathan Joseph at J Joseph 2156 finishing us out in our fastest segment one here ever because we are breezing through it. Are you hearing anything about the Braylon Allen rumors? Now, I haven't really connected with anyone in the program over the last week, and I didn't hear anything from before, but clearly they're out there. It'll be interesting to see if that comes to fruition. Now, if you're wondering what the Braylon Allen rumors are, there's rumors that once the season is done, he's going to transfer from Wisconsin to Michigan. Sounds like there's some veracity to it. If the news coming out spikes it, I don't know. But it's an interesting thing. And at the same time, if with Wisconsin not quite being what it had been, and Michigan's offensive line being more of that Wisconsin type line, why wouldn't you want to come to Michigan? So totally understand it. All right, we are going to go ahead and move on. We've got plenty more left that we're going to try to get to everyone that asked a relatively serious question. I omitted a few, but we will see. Listen, inflation has us all thinking about different ways to cut back, whether it's at the groceries, maybe you're not going out as more, maybe you canceled a vacation. Lord knows, I was talking about taking Sarah to see Hamilton here in Michigan. I didn't know they went on sale and already. So it's all resale. And she's like, listen, don't do that. We are in a recession. We will wait for me to see it until we go to New York when things are a little bit better. So whether it's driving less, dining out less, or buying less from the grocery store, we can all agree that there's nothing fun about less. That's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With Upside, I don't have to cut back because I get cash back on every purchase. To get started, download the free the free Upside app and use my promo code LOCK to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're using or buying on Upside. Check in at the business, pay as usual with a credit card or debit card, and get paid. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. So download the free Upside app today. Use the promo code LOCK to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 more or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using the promo code LOCKED. You can always tell when I'm doing these podcasts and I don't feel particularly awake, which weirdly the energy drink I had today made me feel significantly less awake because when I am stuttering a lot, that's usually a pretty good tell. Anyway, let's move on to our Victors Valiant, starting with Jim at Jim in the North, and I have to do a quick change here. All right, there we go. Jim at Jim in the North. And I keep on losing it because I'm just scrolling here. With Cade having had surgery, how do you feel about the quarterback room? Will that affect design QB runs for JJ? I don't think it will. I think they're just asking him to run smart, learn to get down and stuff like that, rather than go nuts, try to avoid the hits. As far as the quarterback room, obviously you're going to have a little less trust. I mean, Davis Warren seems like he's probably pretty good. You still feel good about the fact that you got Alan Bowman, a guy who started a lot of games. So I still feel good about it. Maybe not as good not having a guy who beat Ohio State and won you a Big Ten championship the year before, but with him saying that he was actually injured even last year and all of that stuff, that kind of makes sense as to kind of where they're at. How do you feel about JJ throwing the long balls? It feels like some forget he's a true sophomore. I feel fine about it, and I was talking to my best friend earlier about it today, and it's like we haven't seen it a lot this year. We've seen him miss quite a bit kind of once we got into Big Ten play, but we've seen it before in Big Ten play last year. We've seen it in non-conference. I kind of feel like to some degree, it's not that Michigan isn't trying to hit those. I think they are, but I think that they're holding something significant back for the Ohio State game. I really am starting to feel that way. We'll see. I'll have to talk to. I know that there are some nefarious doings on the Michigan side when it comes to Ohio State, which I'm super excited to reveal after the game if everything turns out well. But I'm not terribly concerned. I think, like, they're saying they're hitting him in practice. All of them are saying it'll happen. Every single person that will, in that staff is like, yeah, it's happening all the time in practice. Like every single practice, it's working. You need that as the prerequisite for it to otherwise, so we'll see. Data Guy FL at Data Guy FL, you witnessed the jawing in the Michigan Penn State tunnel situation. Was there any hint that the incident could have escalated beyond verbal? No. I mean, apparently there were sandwiches thrown. I didn't see that from my vantage point. No, it was just jawing. It wasn't there was never any point where it felt like it was going to get more than what it was. Right? Like, I am not a person that runs towards other people fighting generally. But that I did, like generally it's like I'm going to stay out of that type of thing. Yeah, I didn't feel like there was anything to that. By the way, happy birthday. Thank you for your work. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Jacob Heminger at Heminger Jacob. What are the current PFF grades for Turner, Jamon, and Johnson? Has Johnson made the case to be a starter, especially against the bigger wide receivers that seem to beat the secondary down the field on 50-50 balls? What's your opinion? That's just going to happen when you have really good receivers. Generally, is they are going to. I don't have a problem if another team is completing 50-50 balls. I just kind of don't. I think it's kind of fine because it's just bound to happen. We're gonna look at if I can get this to work relatively well, and of course it logged me out. Which is always fun. Let's see here. See if I can get this to work here. That's always nice when you have something that just signs you out randomly. All right, so when it comes to coverage grades, they're all grading out pretty good. Will Johnson is graded the highest on PFF. He's an 82.4. And he's got a pretty good, he's only got 40 less snaps than Jamon Green. DJ Turner's got way more, 300. He's graded a 77.4, and Jamon Green is a 75.8. By the way, Mike Sainristil's a 72.3. So I think that, they're all kind of right in that area. They're all the green, like the like exemplary marks, essentially. So, I'm fine with that. As far as the amount of receiving the reception numbers, Will Johnson's giving up 50%. DJ Turner's giving up 43.5, and Jamon Green's giving up 46.7. So, they're all kind of in that same area. I think it's just got to be a rotation very similar to what we've seen, under other defensive coordinators. And I think that that's the way to go. Spencer Whitmore at Spencer Whitmore. What's the best/worst birthday gift you've ever received? I'm also betting Michigan wears the blue pants in Columbus. I would bet that as well. I can't imagine they're going to wear something else. But maybe they do the maize with the maize accessories, but I would imagine it's going to be blue. That's probably what I would imagine. Best birthday gift I ever received came on Wednesday. From Sarah. She had never met my mother, and she had reached out unbeknownst to me to my mom. They met up, and she had a display box that she made full of artifacts from my grandfather who passed in February, who is the most important person in the world to me. So that was easily, like, hands down, from the amount of thoughtfulness to what it actually was. I mean, that was easily the best birthday present that's ever been given to me. It's so thoughtful and really touched my heart in ways that I can't even describe. The worst is probably from my great grandmother, my grandfather's mother, when I was like 6 or 7 or so. She gave me a My Little Pony, like a pink My Little Pony, and I'll never forget that. And because it just seemed like even being that age, it was like, you do know that I'm into Superman, right? And Superman, baseball. I'm a boy. Give me the things that you know that I would want. I think that was the worst one. So personally, U of M clips and bolts at U of M clips bolts. Do you think Michigan is developing into a destination running back school, like how Ohio's a top destination wide receiver school based on their play styles? I mean, you would think, but I mean, it hasn't necessarily, they brought in a 3-star and CJ Stokes. Listen, if Braylon Allen ends up transferring, and, they've got Cole Cabana in this next class, and still Benjamin Hall. To me, at some point, the 5-stars outside of, they got Donovan Edwards, the 5-stars are going to want to start coming, right? Because it just only makes sense. But I think the next step, because Ohio State puts those wide receivers in the first round, Michigan hasn't done that. Michigan's got to start putting those running backs in the first round. So it's a little too early to say that. Will I be at the Michigan Eastern game tonight? I will be. That's the main reason why we gotta go here. P.S. Have you tried the Built Bar Puff Cougar Tail? Thinking about trying it. I have not yet. I'm gonna have to try that. Mark Z at Mark Zimke. It seems like there's a bit of an older brother feel for the relationships recruits have with the writers. When you were more involved with recruiting, did prospects ever ask you for advice? Is there an unspoken rule regarding that to avoid conflicts of interest? Yeah, I never did that. I felt like that would certainly be a conflict of interest to like guide anybody in a certain direction or anything like that. That's certainly not I mean, there was recruits that I was closer to than others, certainly, but generally, like, no, I've never had that type of relationship with any of them, and I don't think that I want to. I think a little bit different once they're in the program, as long as you can still cover them fairly. Anton Sesmita Mangala at Sesmita Mangala. Is Nick Saban now the biggest advocate for playoff expansion? I mean, I don't know. I think he'd probably be like, my team doesn't deserve to be in it based off of how they've done. So, I don't know. Rich Nelson at Rich Nelson 1. Happy birthday, Isaiah. All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Against Rutgers, we got to see a little bit more of the freshman wide receivers, Walker, Clemens, and Morris. Do you think that was just because Roman Wilson was out, or are we making an effort to give these guys opportunities? Do you expect to see more of them against Nebraska? Not sure. It's too early to tell, but I think, this is about the time where we started seeing Andrell last year. But, I mean, that in mind, I want to see more Andrell. I want to see more Henning. I want to see more of some of the guys that are already there. But, if one of those guys could step up and become a possession receiver, like got, 50-50 ball type guy, then that would be great. Because they definitely need something like that. Zan at Zanland. We saw a lot of it's basically the same thing here. We saw a lot of the rookie wide receivers getting non-junk time minutes versus Rutgers. Do you think it has been anything to do with the lack of separation? The vet wide receivers, other than Roman, who did not play, have getting this season. Seems like Harbaugh is trying to get the young guys out for more action moving forward. I think that's probably accurate. Yes. I'm not really sure. I mean, we'll see what happens. It's one game is what it is, and 2 games is a trend. Zan at Zanland. We already did you. Adam Casel at Adam_Casel. Happy belated birthday. Thank you. Appreciate it. What did you enjoy most last weekend? Hamilton, the game, or Aladdin? I think actually Aladdin, maybe. You would think Hamilton. Hamilton's probably my favorite property out there in the world. More so than Star Wars, more so than anything. I think that's my favorite thing. But it was hard to live up to. I mean, I know we got another question about this, but it was hard to live up to what I've seen and heard from the original cast. The game, I mean, I was never going to just absolutely have a blast at the game. It's Rutgers, when it all comes down to it. I mean, I had fun, but Aladdin, I think, because I made the decision about 2 hours before I went, and because I sat front row center, and it wasn't that expensive to do, I think that ended up being my favorite part. Does Minter appear to make in-game adjustments better than McDonald? I'm sure many want to wait until 11/26, but 9 games is a good sample size. I think so. I didn't think that McDonald was necessarily like an elite in-game adjustments guy per se, right? So, I mean, he did a really good job, I think, and there certainly were games where, but like Minter has been like elite. I mean, they have outscored the last several opponents 100-3 from the Penn State game forward. Actually, maybe it's since from the Indiana game forward. I'm not sure. Really, really amazing adjustments so far. Finishing us out in segment 2, Perry Mitchell at Perry Mitchell 08. When McCarthy gets calibrated in the deep passing game, how often do you think they will use it moving forward? Just as a change of pace, here's the thing is, and I shouldn't say a change of pace. If teams are loading up to stop the run, then you can just use it and back them off. So I think it's balance is the key. That's what they're going for. Once they can create balance, then they'll use it when necessary. They'll RPO, they'll do those things that will make it necessary to, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, this episode of Locked On Wolverines brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer to esports. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you could find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so here's the deal. We have more questions than I know what to do with and not a lot of time to do them. So outside of this first one, we're just going to go as rapid fire as possible. A lot of new people asking questions, but there's like 20, some 30. We got to wrap it up eventually, unfortunately. So the goal is to just get through these, but I'm going to take more time. I'm going to take, to the chagrin of those people who are question askers. Angelique at Shingelis, that's Angelique Shingelis of the Detroit News, asked, could you break down Hamilton versus Aladdin? And I want to take 45 seconds to do that. So Hamilton, if you haven't seen Hamilton, by the way, even if you're not a musicals person, just pop on Disney Plus and watch it. It completely changed my life. I'm a person that loves history. I knew very little about Alexander Hamilton except for his duel with Aaron Burr, and that he's on the $10 bill before I saw it. And then since then, I became like obsessed. I went to Hamilton's grave while I was in New York. I just think it's a brilliant piece of art. Aladdin, while I think I enjoyed it more. Now, here's the thing about Aladdin. I am a dork, and I've been a dork about Aladdin since it came out. So Aladdin came out in theaters, I believe, when I was in 6th grade. In 7th grade, it was out on VHS. I was such a fan, I literally sat down and transcribed the whole thing by hand, because that's the level of dorkiness I am with Aladdin. I know Aladdin so well. So getting to see that on Broadway, which I didn't even know was a thing until I was there, that also had a special place in my heart. So it really felt like a fulfilling trip in that sense. So, all right, we've got about 7 minutes. We're going to go rapid fire here. Marty Williams at Marty3535. Chances Stokes and Dunlap get some run to give number 2 and 7 a breather this Saturday. Maybe a little. I still expect the other two to get a combined 35 to 40 carries. Maybe a couple of carries each second, third quarter, or just ride out the rest of the way with the two big dogs regardless. I only old running backs think like this, I guess. Thanks. Yeah, I think that they'll split time. But the main, I think you'll see them. I don't necessarily think it will be to rest them per se. Reed Hansen at Reed_Hansen. Which players are due for a week off to fix small injuries before the Ohio State game? Oh, there's a big list. I mean, you saw a bunch of the guys out last week. You can add Luke Schoonmaker to that, who I saw wearing a sling. He's okay, but I think that he certainly could be one of those guys. Trevor Keegan, obviously from his injury last week. I had heard Mozzie Smith had been injured going into the Rutgers game. They were going to keep him on a pitch count, and it didn't seem like they did that. So there's a couple guys like that. So I'm not really sure. Beaches at Beaches UOM. Do you think Cade will transfer or stay? It's kind of hard to ask him to stay when he lost his starting job, but I've seen weirder things. But I would bet he would probably transfer, but I don't think that. Again, I've seen weirder things. Michael A. Beaton at Michael Beaton. Status of Corum, heard he's banged up. I hadn't heard anything about that. I think that he's fine. Curtis Peterson at @no_anchors83. Any word on Akai Hill Green's return? I thought he'd be back by now. Me too, but he dressed for a couple games and then stopped dressing. So I see him around the facility all the time. At this point, I mean, maybe you wait a game or two and then, he gets his red shirt. I mean, probably get a medical red shirt anyway, but still. When self-deprecation goes horribly wrong at Associated J, how concerned are you if Jackson Smith and Jigba returns on November 26th? JSN stung us last year. Our corners seem to lack the size to compete with big receivers despite being well coached. I don't... It's not about the receiver. Michigan got torched on some plays last year and won the game. I think that they're going to make plays. Michigan's going to make plays. It's going to be about who makes more plays. And if Michigan can play ball control, running the football, being aggressive up front, if they get CJ Stroud off his spot enough, there will be enough opportunity for Michigan to make enough plays on defense to keep him from completely going nuts, right? But it's a little hard because he hasn't really gone nuts this year yet because he's been in a few games and, we'll see. Chris Foster at CT Foster 87. Do you think they'll try to pad Corum stats to get him to New York? I think they're going to keep on trying to get him 100 yards per game for sure. That much, I think. Will from Michigan at Will from MI. What position group do you feel most concerned about for us as we approach our pseudo play-in game in Columbus? Probably linebackers because it's pretty thin at the moment. And there certainly has been some coverage issues. I think they've done not better than a lot of people say, but I obviously it's still a concern. Follow up, do you foresee that group having a chance to prove itself over the next few games to quell some of those fears? Some guys got to return, of course. Kalel Mulling's another one that might not play. He didn't play last week. I think that they certainly have the chance, of course. The Slumdog at Savant 007. Cornerbacks are consistently getting beaten over the top. There's enough tape for OSU to leverage. How is Michigan going to adjust? I don't think they're getting consistently beaten over the top. You often see them running stride for stride, and you've seen in games like the MSU game where they just adjust the safeties. They're not getting consistently beat over the top. They're occasionally getting beat in 50-50 balls. Every now and again, they're getting beat, but that's where a good pass rush comes in. They've got to get home in the pass rush to help that out because there is no secondary in the country that doesn't have corners getting beat every now and again. And that's where Michigan is right now. And for all of the hand wringing that you can say, Keon Coleman and what he did, or Gavin Wimsatt last week, Rutgers is the one that had the most success outside of Maryland. But Keon Coleman, 1 touchdown, right? And Michigan won these games. Even Ohio State's got certainly the option to do some things, but I don't think it's the end of the world. And I think Michigan's doing just fine in its secondary. Ricky Roscoe at Ricky Roscoe 0. What's your feeling on the overall health of the team at this point in the season? Do you feel like it's more guys banged up and giving them games off, or actually hurt? I think guys are banged up. I don't think they're hurt outside of the ones that you already know. I mean, it's having the guys out that isn't good. Eric All, some of those guys. All right, we are running way out of time. Esme at Char_Adams. Do you think they still try to work in some younger receivers in the next few games, or do you think they'll stick with who we've seen and try not to expand on that? I love Bell, but as often as he's targeted, he should have more production. I think that they might. We obviously saw some of that already. So I think that they very well might try to continue to use. I mean, we saw it's Tyler Morris and Marion Walker. Clearly, there's a reason why they got some time in that game. We'll see if they get some time against Nebraska, and then I'll kind of make my choice on there. All right, so here is what we're going to do. We've got like 20 questions, 15 questions left. I'm going to put that in the next podcast that we're going to do before the game on Saturday. At least that's my goal. So we will get to the rest of you who asked questions, but we are out of time today. So thank you to those who did ask the questions, whether it was answered or not. We'll get the rest of everybody. Thank you for watching and or listening. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.